Jake stole my grandmother's recipe again. This time, he was serving it to a packed dining room, claiming credit for the fusion technique that had been passed down through 3 generations of my family. The familiar aroma of turmeric, cardamom, and my grandmother's secret spice blend wafted toward me as I sat in the corner booth of Jake's kitchen, watching him bask in praise for what was undeniably my life's work. I trembled as I lifted my phone, pretending to scroll through social media while actually photographing every single dish that emerged from his kitchen. My signature coconut curry ramen, my grandmother's tandoori pizza with the hand-ground masala blend, even the dessert, my fusion gulab jamun cheesecake that I'd perfected after months of failed attempts. Everything I'd poured my heart into during our partnership was being served under his name, his brand, his success story. The sound of clinking silverware felt like nails on a chalkboard as I watched diners rave about the innovative cuisine. A food blogger at the next table gushed into her phone's camera about how Chef Jake had revolutionized fusion cooking in our city. My hands clenched around my water glass so tightly, I feared it might shatter. The inspiration comes from my extensive travels through South Asia, Jake's voice carried across the restaurant as he chatted with a table of investors. His expensive chef's coat was pristine white, not a single stain, unlike mine, which always bore the evidence of actual cooking. I spent years perfecting these family techniques, my family's techniques. I forced myself to remain seated, to keep photographing, to document every stolen dish. This was my quiet power move, gathering evidence while he believed he'd won. The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth, but I swallowed it down. I needed proof, not just anger. A server approached carrying my grandmother's famous lamb biryani, the rice perfectly golden with saffron that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. The technique for layering the flavors was something Nani had taught me when I was 12, standing on a step stool in her tiny kitchen, learning to feel the exact moment when the onions caramelized to perfection. "Excuse me," I called to the server, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Could you tell me about this dish? The preparation method seems familiar." The young woman beamed with pride. "Oh, this is Chef Jake's signature biryani. He developed the technique himself. The way he layers the aromatics is completely revolutionary. No one in the city makes it quite like this." Revolutionary. The same word Nani used when she first showed me how her mother had adapted traditional recipes for the American palate after immigrating in 1962. The same innovation that had taken decades to perfect, now being credited to a man who'd never set foot in my grandmother's kitchen until I brought him there. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Priya. "Girl, you need to see this review in Food and Wine about Jake's new place. He's getting national attention." I didn't need to read it. I was living it, watching my heritage being repackaged and sold, while I sat powerless in a corner booth, pretending to be just another customer. The injustice of it all made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to order dessert, my dessert, and eat every bite while planning my next move. As I prepared to leave, Jake himself emerged from the kitchen for his nightly meet and greet with customers. His sandy hair was perfectly styled, his smile practiced and charming. He'd always been handsome in that effortless way that made people trust him instantly. That same charm had fooled me for 3 years. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and accepting compliments with false humility. "Thank you so much. I'm just honored to share these flavors with the community. Food is love, you know?" Food is love. My grandmother's exact words spoken every time she taught me a new dish. When Jake's eyes met mine across the restaurant, I saw a flicker of something. Surprise, maybe guilt, before his practiced smile returned. He didn't approach my table. He knew exactly who I was and what he'd done. I stood slowly, leaving exact change on the table, along with a receipt that I photographed. Evidence of my visit, my witness to his theft, my documentation of this betrayal. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel his eyes following me, probably wondering what I was planning. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, carrying with it the sounds of traffic and distant music from the bar next door. But underneath it all, I could still smell my grandmother's spices, bastardized and commercialized, drifting from the restaurant's ventilation system. My phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before declining the call. Whatever he wanted to say, whatever excuse or manipulation he was preparing, I wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. But as I walked to my car, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. Jake had made a fatal mistake. He'd stolen from me again, but this time, I wasn't the naive culinary student who'd trusted him with everything. This time, I was going to fight back. The war for my family's legacy was about to begin. The memory hits me like a slap as I drive home from Jake's restaurant. 3 years ago, we were the golden couple of culinary school, Maya Patel and Jake Morrison, the ambitious fusion chef and the charismatic businessman who were going to revolutionize the restaurant industry together. I remember the exact moment I fell for him, standing in the teaching kitchen during our advanced techniques class, watching him effortlessly fillet a whole salmon while cracking jokes that made everyone laugh. I was struggling with a basic knife cut when he appeared beside me, his hands guiding mine as he showed me the proper technique. The warmth of his chest against my back, the scent of his cologne mixed with kitchen aromatics, the way he whispered encouragement in my ear, it all combined to make me dizzy with possibility. "You've got incredible instincts," he'd said, his breath tickling my neck. "But you're holding back. Let me help you unleash that potential." Looking back, I can see how perfectly calculated that moment was. Jake had a gift for making people feel special, chosen, important. He'd done his research on me, knew I was the scholarship kid from the immigrant family, the one who'd grown up working in her family's struggling restaurant while dreaming of something bigger. Our first real conversation happened after that knife skills class, over coffee at the campus cafe. I was sketching fusion menu ideas in my notebook, combinations of my grandmother's traditional Indian techniques with modern American presentations that I'd been dreaming about for years. "What's that?" Jake asked, sliding into the seat across from me uninvited. I covered the notebook reflexively. "Just some recipe ideas, nothing important." "Come on, don't be modest. I saw how focused you were in class today. You've got something special brewing in that beautiful head of yours." The compliment made me blush, and before I knew it, I was showing him my carefully guarded concepts. Tandoori spiced pizza with naan crust, curry-infused ramen broths, traditional Indian sweets reimagined as modern plated desserts. Ideas I'd been developing since I was 15, working alongside my grandmother in our family restaurant's cramped kitchen. Jake's eyes lit up as he flipped through my sketches. "Maya, this is incredible. This is exactly what the culinary world needs right now. Authentic fusion that honors tradition while pushing boundaries. We should work together on this." "We?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Why not? You've got the culinary vision. I've got the business sense. We could be unstoppable." That night, Jake walked me back to my dorm room, and our fingers intertwined for the first time. The texture of his calloused chef's hands against my palms felt like coming home and setting sail for adventure all at once. When he kissed me goodnight under the flickering lamppost outside my building, I tasted possibility and promise on his lips. Over the following months, our relationship blossomed alongside our business dreams. Jake would spend weekends at my family's restaurant, charming my parents and grandmother while learning techniques that my family had perfected over decades. He had an amazing ability to make everyone feel appreciated and heard. "Your grandmother is incredible," he'd tell me after long afternoons in Nani's kitchen. "The way she explains the balance of spices, the timing of each step, it's like learning from a master artist." I glowed with pride watching him integrate so seamlessly into my world. He remembered everyone's names, asked thoughtful questions about our family's immigration story, and even helped with the dinner rush without being asked. My parents, who'd been skeptical of any boy I brought home, quickly adopted him as a surrogate son. "He understands our food," my mother would say approvingly. "He respects the culture behind the recipes." Those were the golden months when Jake and I would stay up until dawn planning our future restaurant. We'd spread my grandmother's recipe cards across his dorm room floor, talking through modifications and presentations while sharing takeout containers of pad thai or pizza. He'd sketch floor plans for our dream space while I perfected fusion techniques that honored my heritage while appealing to contemporary palates. "We'll call it Heritage," Jake suggested one night, his arm wrapped around me as we lay on his narrow dorm bed. a place where tradition meets innovation. I loved the name, I loved him, I loved the vision we were building together. The first crack in our perfect partnership appeared during our final semester. We'd been selected to participate in the school's prestigious restaurant incubator program, where student teams could operate a pop up restaurant with real customers and investors. It was the opportunity we'd been working toward for 2 years. During our planning meetings, I noticed Jake's language beginning to shift. Our fusion concepts became his interpretation of global flavors. My grandmother's techniques transformed into traditional methods he'd studied. The subtle changes were so gradual, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maya, you're being too sensitive, he'd say when I questioned the way he presented our ideas to the program directors. We're partners. What matters is that we succeed together. But the night before our pop up launch, I overheard Jake on the phone with his parents, describing the venture as his restaurant concept and mentioning me only as his talented sous chef. The words hit me like cold water, but when I confronted him, he pulled me into his arms and kissed away my concerns. Baby, you know how my parents are. They don't understand the restaurant business. I was just trying to keep things simple for them. You and I know the truth. This is our dream, our success. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I swallowed my doubts and focused on making our pop-up restaurant the best it could be. Our opening night was magical. The fusion menu we'd developed played perfectly, traditional Indian flavors elevated with modern techniques, familiar comfort foods brightened with unexpected spice combinations. Food critics raved about the innovative approach. Customers lined up for reservations, and investors started calling. But as the success grew, so did Jake's willingness to take solo credit. In interviews, he spoke eloquently about his culinary journey and his unique perspective on fusion cuisine. When reporters asked about influences, he mentioned studying traditional techniques, but never specifically credited my family or our collaborative development process. The final straw came during our graduation ceremony. Jake had been selected as the program's outstanding student, and his acceptance speech was broadcast to the entire culinary school community. This recognition belongs to everyone who believed in my vision, he said, standing confidently at the podium in his graduation robes. To my instructors who challenged me to push boundaries, to my family who supported my dreams, and to the traditional cooks who preserved these ancient techniques for modern chefs like me to discover and reinterpret. Ancient techniques for modern chefs like him to discover. As if my grandmother's recipes were archaeological artifacts he'd excavated rather than living traditions I'd shared from my own family's kitchen. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, Jake found me standing alone by the catering tables, tears streaming down my cheeks despite my best efforts to maintain composure. Maya, what's wrong? This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Our lives? I turned to face him, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake, you just gave a speech about your vision, your interpretation, your discovery. Where was I in any of that? His expression shifted, the charming mask slipping just enough for me to see something calculating underneath. Maya, come on. You know how these things work. One person has to be the face, the voice. But behind the scenes, we're still partners. Behind the scenes. Look, the investors want to work with me. The opportunities are coming to me, but that doesn't change what we have, what we've built together. I stared at him, really seeing him clearly for the first time in 2 years. The way he positioned himself at the center of every photo, the way he steered conversations to focus on his contributions, the way he'd gradually, systematically erased my voice from our shared story. I need some time to think, I said finally. About what? Maya, we're about to launch our dream restaurant. Don't let graduation emotions ruin everything we've worked for. But I was already walking away, the sound of celebration and laughter fading behind me as I escaped to my car. That night, I drove home to my family's restaurant and sat in the kitchen with my grandmother, surrounded by the spice containers and well-worn recipe cards that represented decades of love, tradition, and hard work. Tell me what's wrong, Beta, Nani said softly, her weathered hands stroking my hair as I cried into her lap. And for the first time, I told someone the whole truth about Jake. about our partnership, about how I was starting to suspect that the man I loved was slowly stealing my entire culinary identity. What I didn't know was that Jake had been planning his ultimate betrayal for months, setting up business meetings and investor presentations that I knew nothing about. While I was questioning our relationship, he was already preparing to cut me out entirely. The real heartbreak was still coming. The business card feels crisp between my trembling fingers as I sit in the waiting room of Chen and Associates Intellectual Property Law. 3 days have passed since my devastating dinner at Jake's restaurant, and I've barely slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see his smug face accepting praise for my grandmother's recipes. Sarah Chen emerges from her office with a warm smile and a firm handshake. She's younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. Her office walls are lined with certificates and photos of her with various clients, including several chefs I recognize from Food Network. Maya, please have a seat. I understand you're dealing with intellectual property theft in the culinary space? The words tumble out of me like water through a broken dam. I tell her everything: the partnership with Jake, the gradual erasure of my contributions, the stolen recipes, the restaurant that should have been ours now, operating under his name alone. Sarah listens intently, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, while the scratching sound of her pen punctuates my story. This is unfortunately more common than you might think, Sarah says when I finish. Recipe theft is notoriously difficult to prosecute because most dishes can't be copyrighted. However, there are some interesting angles we could pursue. She explains the difference between copyright, trademark, and trade secret protection. Recipes themselves are usually considered basic instructions that can't be protected, but unique preparation methods, distinctive presentations, and especially business names or signature dish titles can potentially be trademarked. The key is proving prior use and originality. Sarah continues. Do you have documentation showing your development of these recipes? Photos, dated notes, anything that establishes you as the creator? I pull out my phone and start scrolling through years of photos. Pictures of me cooking with my grandmother, dated sketches of fusion concepts, social media posts from culinary school showing my experimental dishes. Then I remember something else. I kept detailed journals throughout culinary school. Every recipe test, every modification, every technique I learned from my grandmother. It's all documented with dates and times. Sarah's eyes light up. That's excellent. We'll need those journals, plus any witnesses who can testify to your creative process. Your grandmother, family members, classmates who saw you developing these concepts. The consultation continues for 2 hours as we dive deeper into the specifics of my case. Sarah explains that while we can't protect basic recipes, we might be able to trademark specific dish names, unique preparation methods, and the overall concept of my fusion approach if we can prove I developed it first. There's something else, Sarah says, her voice taking on a more serious tone. If we can establish that Jake knowingly stole your intellectual property, we might be able to pursue damages. Has he admitted to using your recipes? I think about the recorded conversations I've been having with Jake since culinary school, voice memos I made to process our relationship dynamics. Some of those recordings might contain admissions, especially from the early days when he was more careless about giving me credit. I might have some recordings, nothing deliberately incriminating, but conversations where he discusses using my family's techniques. Perfect. We'll need to review those carefully. But Maya, I want to be clear about something. This won't be easy or cheap. Trademark applications alone cost thousands. And if Jake fights us, litigation could run into 6 figures. The number hits me like a physical blow. My savings account has maybe $3,000, and I'm currently working as a line cook at a mid-tier restaurant while trying to figure out my next move. The injustice of it burns in my throat. Jake is profiting from my work while I struggle to afford legal representation to fight back. There might be other options, Sarah continues, reading my expression. If your case is strong enough, I might be willing to work on contingency, meaning I only get paid if we win. But first, I need to see all your documentation. I spend the next week gathering evidence, my childhood journals filled with recipe experiments, photos spanning back to high school of me cooking with my grandmother, text message threads with Jake where he asks for specific technique clarifications. social media posts from culinary schools showing my fusion concepts in development. The most powerful evidence comes from an unexpected source. My phone's automatic backup system had saved dozens of videos I'd taken during our restaurant pop up, including several where Jake explains dishes to customers using my exact language and descriptions. These traditional spicing techniques have been in Maya's family for generations, I hear him say in one video, his arm wrapped around my waist as we address a table of food bloggers. She's taught me so much about balancing these complex flavors. Listening to that recording breaks my heart all over again. There was a time when Jake acknowledged my contributions, when he seemed genuinely grateful for what I was sharing with him. The man in that video feels like a stranger compared to the calculating thief who now claims sole credit for everything we built together. Sarah reviews my evidence with growing excitement. This is very strong, Maya. You have clear documentation of prior use, witness testimony from family members, and even Jake's own words acknowledging your contributions. I think we have a real case here. She outlines our strategy. First, file trademark applications for my signature dish names and preparation methods. Then, send cease and desist letters to Jake's restaurant, demanding he stop using my proprietary techniques. If he complies, we've won without expensive litigation. If he fights, we escalate to federal court. There's one more thing, Sarah says as we wrap up our meeting. I did some research on Jake's restaurant. It looks like he's leveraging heavily to expand quickly. Rumors about a second location, maybe even franchising. If we can disrupt his operations now, we might be able to force a settlement before he becomes too big to fight. As I drive home from Sarah's office, my mind races with possibilities and fears. The legal fees will drain my savings even with the contingency arrangement. Jake has more resources and connections than I do. The restaurant industry is small, and fighting him publicly could damage my own career prospects. But then I think about my grandmother, now 82, and still working in our family restaurant's kitchen every day. I think about the hours she spent teaching me techniques that her mother had brought from India, skills passed down through generations of women who had preserved their culture through food, even when everything else was stripped away. Jake doesn't just steal from me when he claims those recipes. He steals from every woman who came before me, every cook who adapted and evolved and preserved these techniques through love and necessity. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Maya, we need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly. Jake? I screenshot the message and immediately forward it to Sarah. Even his attempt at reconciliation might be useful evidence. But I don't respond. Not yet. Instead, I drive to my grandmother's house and spend the evening helping her prepare dinner, learning new techniques and stories I can document and protect. Each recipe she teaches me is another weapon in my arsenal, another piece of heritage that Jake can never steal. Tomorrow, we file the first trademark application. The war for my family's legacy officially begins. The invitation arrives 3 weeks after I file my first trademark application. Heavy cardstock, elegant typography, Jake's signature confident smile beaming from a professional headshot. You're cordially invited to celebrate the grand opening of Jake's Kitchen Expanded. Now serving lunch, dinner, and weekend brunch featuring Chef Jake Morrison's acclaimed fusion innovations. My hands shake as I read the details. Not only is he hosting a grand opening celebration, but he's also launching weekend brunch featuring what the invitation describes as heritage-inspired breakfast fusion and traditional techniques reinvented for modern palates. My grandmother's breakfast parathas, my fusion pancake concepts, even my masala chai creme brulee. I set the invitation down and immediately call Sarah Chen. He's expanding, I tell her, my voice tight with suppressed rage. Jake's adding new services and he's using more of my concepts. We need to move faster. Actually, this could work in our favor, Sarah responds. The more aggressively he expands using your intellectual property, the stronger our case becomes. But we need concrete evidence that he's serving your specific dishes. That's when I hatch my plan. If Jake wants to publicly celebrate stealing my life's work, I'll be there to document every moment of his theft. The sound of clinking champagne glasses fills Jake's expanded restaurant as I enter, wearing dark sunglasses and a wig I borrowed from my theater major roommate. The disguise feels ridiculous, but it's necessary. I need to observe and record without Jake recognizing me immediately. The restaurant is packed with local food bloggers, investors, and industry professionals. I recognize several faces from culinary school, successful chefs who've made names for themselves in our city's competitive restaurant scene. Everyone is here to witness Jake's triumph, his celebration of what he's positioning as his innovative approach to fusion cuisine. I order a mimosa and find a corner table where I can observe the kitchen pass while appearing to scroll through my phone. Actually, I'm recording everything: the plating presentations, the specific garnishes, the exact way each dish is assembled and served. Every detail that matches my original concepts, my techniques, my creative vision. The brunch menu is devastating in its familiarity. Jake's Sunrise Masala Benedict is my fusion take on Eggs Benedict with curry-spiced hollandaise and naan instead of English muffins. His heritage hash combines traditional Indian spiced potatoes with chorizo and eggs, a concept I developed during our pop-up restaurant as a way to honor both my heritage and appeal to American breakfast preferences. But the most painful theft is what he's calling grandmother's secret pancakes. Fluffy American pancakes infused with cardamom and rosewater, served with a honey saffron syrup. These are based directly on my grandmother's special occasion breakfast treats, recipes she taught me during our early morning cooking sessions when I was homesick during culinary school. The metallic taste of fury fills my mouth as I watch Jake emerge from the kitchen to work the dining room. He's wearing a custom chef's coat embroidered with Chef Jake Morrison, Fusion Innovator, and carries himself with the confident swagger of someone who believes his own lies. "Thank you all so much for being here today," he announces to the dining room, raising his champagne glass. "This expansion represents everything I've been working toward, bringing authentic heritage techniques to modern American palates while honoring the traditional cooks who preserved these methods for generations. Traditional cooks who preserved these methods. Not my girlfriend's grandmother who taught me personally. Not the family recipes that were shared with me in trust. Just generic traditional cooks, as if these techniques materialized from thin air rather than being lovingly passed down through my specific family line." I force myself to remain seated as Jake continues his speech, describing his journey of discovery through ancient culinary traditions and his unique perspective on fusion innovation. Every word is carefully crafted to position himself as a scholar and innovator rather than the thief I know him to be. A food blogger at the next table leans over to her companion. "I heard he spent years traveling through South Asia, learning directly from village cooks. That's where he discovered these incredible spice combinations." Years traveling through South Asia, Jake has never been to India. The closest he's come to South Asian cuisine is the hours he spent in my grandmother's kitchen, taking careful notes while she patiently explained techniques that took her decades to perfect. My phone buzzes with a text from Priya. "Girl, did you see Jake's restaurant is getting featured in Food and Wine next month? Something about rising stars in fusion cuisine." I screenshot the message and add it to my growing evidence file. Every mention, every accolade, every piece of recognition Jake receives from my work strengthens our case while simultaneously twisting the knife deeper into my heart. And as the celebration continues, I notice Jake's head chef, a woman named Carmen, whom I recognize from culinary school, looking increasingly uncomfortable. She keeps glancing toward the dining room with an expression I can't quite read. When she steps outside for a cigarette break, I follow. "Carmen?" I call softly, removing my sunglasses. "It's Maya Patel." Her face transforms with recognition and something that looks like relief. "Oh my God, Maya, I was hoping I'd run into you. Listen, we need to talk." We walk to a quiet corner of the parking lot, away from the restaurant's windows. Carmen lights her cigarette with shaking hands, clearly stressed about something. "I need you to know," she begins. "Some of us remember culinary school. We remember your pop-up restaurant, your concepts, your family recipes. What Jake's doing, it's not right." My heart pounds as I realize what she's offering. "Carmen, would you be willing to testify about what you witnessed during school? About the development of these recipes?" "Maya, it's more than that. Jake has been sloppy about covering his tracks. There are emails, old menu planning documents, even some video footage from the pop-up that shows you explaining these techniques. I've been saving everything because Honestly, I was hoping someone would eventually call him out. She pulls out her phone and shows me a folder of screenshots. Emails from Jake asking her to recreate Maya's grandmother's masala blend. Text messages where he refers to dishes as the curry ramen Maya developed and that dessert concept Maya showed us. Why are you showing me this? I ask, though I'm already mentally adding this evidence to our case file. Because I'm tired of watching him steal credit that belongs to you, and because she hesitates, looking back toward the restaurant. Because he's already talking about stealing from other people. There's a pastry chef in Portland whose dessert concepts he's been adapting. A taco truck owner whose fusion approaches he claims inspired his new lunch menu. The scope of Jake's theft suddenly becomes clear. I'm not his only victim. I'm just his most successful theft, the foundation he's building his entire career on. Carmen, would you be willing to go on record with this information? She nods firmly. I'll do whatever you need. This industry is hard enough without people like Jake making it worse for the rest of us. As I drive home with Carmen's evidence and my own recordings from the grand opening, my phone rings. Jake's name flashes on the screen, and this time I answer. Maya, I saw you at the restaurant today. The wig was a nice touch, but you really think I wouldn't recognize the woman I was in love with for 3 years? The casual way he mentions our past relationship, as if it was just another tool he used to access my family's recipes, makes my stomach turn. But I force my voice to remain steady. Congratulations on your grand opening, Jake. I especially enjoyed the grandmother's secret pancakes. Very creative name for my grandmother's recipe. Maya, come on. We both know that recipes can't be owned. Food is meant to be shared, evolved, interpreted. What I'm doing is honoring these traditions by bringing them to a wider audience. Was that what you call it? Look, I understand you're upset about how things ended between us. But this doesn't have to be adversarial. There's room for both of us to succeed in this industry. The audacity of his words takes my breath away. He's literally built his career on my stolen intellectual property, and he's positioning himself as the generous one, willing to let me succeed in this industry. You're right, Jake. There's definitely room for both of us in this industry. In fact, I'm looking forward to showing everyone exactly how much room there is. I hang up before he can respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and determination. Jake just made his first major mistake. He underestimated me. He thinks I'm still the naive culinary student who trusted him with everything, but I'm not that person anymore. I'm a woman with legal representation, documented evidence, and a growing network of allies who've witnessed his theft firsthand. The real battle is about to begin. The law office conference room smells like coffee and determination as Sarah Chen spreads my evidence across the massive oak table. 3 weeks of investigation have yielded more documentation than either of us anticipated. Time-stamped photos, recorded conversations, witness statements, and most damaging of all, Carmen's cache of emails where Jake explicitly references my techniques and family recipes. This is extraordinary, Sarah murmurs, reviewing Carmen's screenshot folder for the third time. He's basically created a paper trail of his own theft. My grandmother sits beside me, her weathered hands folded over a cardboard box containing 60 years of recipe cards, immigration documents, and family photos. At 82, Nani has agreed to testify about her techniques and how she taught them specifically to me, not to Jake. Beta, she says softly, her voice carrying the weight of decades. When we came to this country, all we had were our recipes and our stories. Your grandfather died when your father was young, but I kept our traditions alive through food. These recipes are not just instructions. They are our history. Sarah nods respectfully. Mrs. Patel, your testimony will be crucial. We need to establish that these aren't generic techniques Jake could have learned anywhere, but specific family methods passed down through your lineage. We spend the morning organizing evidence into categories: prior use documentation, witness statements, proof of Jake's knowledge that these were my proprietary techniques, and evidence of commercial damage. My phone rings constantly with calls from other chefs Carmen has connected me with, people who've witnessed similar theft from Jake, or who remember my original menu development from culinary school. The most damaging evidence comes from an unexpected source, Jake's own social media history. Sarah's paralegal has been combing through his posts, and we discovered that in the early days of our relationship, Jake frequently tagged me in photos of dishes he was learning to prepare. Look at this post from 2 years ago, Sarah says, pointing to her laptop screen. Jake cooking your grandmother's biryani with the caption, Learning Family Secrets from the Master at Maya Paddled Chef, hash blessed hash traditional wisdom. He literally documented his access to your proprietary techniques. The irony is devastating. Jake's own need for social media validation has created an undeniable record of his theft. Post after post shows him in my family's restaurant kitchen, learning from my grandmother, preparing dishes he now claims to have developed independently. My phone buzzes with a call from an unknown New York number. Sarah nods for me to answer. Maya Patel? This is Jennifer Walsh from Food and Wine magazine. I'm calling about our upcoming feature on rising fusion chefs. We'd originally planned to focus on Jake Morrison, but we've received some concerning information about the originality of his concepts. My heart pounds as I explain our situation to the journalist. She listens carefully, asking detailed questions about my documentation and timeline. When I mention our trademark applications, her interest clearly piques. Maya, would you be willing to go on record about this? Our readers deserve to know when someone is misrepresenting their culinary innovations. After I hang up, Sarah grins broadly. Media attention could be very helpful for our case. If Jake's reputation gets damaged before he can establish himself as the definitive fusion innovator, it limits his ability to claim damages from our actions. We spend the afternoon filing additional trademark applications, not just for dish names now, but for specific preparation methods and even the concept of heritage fusion cuisine that combines traditional Indian techniques with contemporary American presentations. Each application costs hundreds of dollars, but Sarah explains they're essential for establishing my intellectual property rights. The musty smell of old paper fills the room as my grandmother opens her recipe box, revealing handwritten cards in 3 languages: English, Hindi, and Gujarati. Some cards are yellowed with age, stained with decades of use, annotated with modifications and improvements developed over years of cooking for our family restaurant. This masala blend, Nani says, holding up a card covered in her careful handwriting. I created this in 1987 when your father complained that traditional garam masala was too strong for American customers. Took me 6 months to perfect the balance. Sarah photographs each card, noting the dates and annotations. We're building more than a legal case. We're documenting the evolution of immigrant cuisine, the way traditional techniques adapt and evolve when loving hands guide them toward new palates and preferences. My phone rings again. This time it's Jake, and Sarah gestures for me to answer while she starts recording. Maya, what the hell are you doing? His voice is tight with anger, no trace of his usual charm. I just got served with trademark applications claiming you own techniques that have been used in Indian cooking for centuries. Actually, Jake, I'm trademarking specific preparation methods and dish presentations that I developed through years of work with my family. Methods you learned directly from me and my grandmother. This is insane! You can't trademark cooking techniques. Watch me. Sarah gives me a thumbs up as Jake's voice rises. His angry response is exactly what we need. Evidence that he understands these aren't generic techniques, but specific methods he learned from my family. Maya, you're making a huge mistake. I have investors, expansion plans, a nationally recognized brand. If you think you can just sue your way into success, you're delusional. I'll destroy your reputation in this industry. Are you threatening me, Jake? I ask calmly, watching Sarah scribble notes about his hostile tone. I'm telling you the reality of this situation. You're nobody, Maya. A line cook at a mediocre restaurant trying to claim credit for innovations that I've spent years developing and perfecting. Who do you think people will believe? The line goes dead. Sarah stops the recording and looks at me with satisfaction. Perfect. He just gave us evidence of intimidation and, more importantly, confirmed that he considers these techniques to be innovations rather than traditional methods. That helps our originality argument. As we wrap up our evidence-gathering session, Carmen arrives with a flash drive containing what she calls the nuclear option. Video footage from our culinary school pop-up restaurant that clearly shows me explaining fusion techniques to customers while Jake stands beside me, learning. I saved everything, Carmen explains. Call it a chef's intuition. But something about Jake always felt off to me. Too smooth, too willing to take credit. I figured eventually someone would need proof of what really happened. The video is damning. In clip after clip, I'm the one explaining dishes to customers, describing the cultural significance of spice combinations, demonstrating techniques while Jake watches and learns. His role appears clearly subordinate. He's the charming front-of-house presence, while I'm the culinary innovator developing the concepts that would later make him famous. This is incredible evidence, Sarah says. Jake will have a very hard time explaining why he's now claiming to have developed techniques that these videos show you teaching him. My grandmother reaches over and squeezes my hand. Beta, your mother called me yesterday. The whole family is proud of you for fighting back. We came to this country with nothing but our recipes and our determination. You're protecting both. As we prepare to leave the law office, Sarah outlines our next steps. The trademark applications are pending, which gives us legal standing to send cease and desist letters. The media interest from Food and Wine could provide additional pressure. And if Jake continues to expand his operations using my stolen concepts, we'll have even stronger grounds for damages. There's something else, Sarah adds. I've been researching Jake's business structure. His restaurant is heavily leveraged, and he's been courting investors for rapid expansion. If we can create enough legal uncertainty around his intellectual property claims, those investors might get nervous. The smell of cardamom and cinnamon wafts from my grandmother's recipe box as she carefully packs away the cards that represent decades of culinary evolution. Each recipe tells a story of adaptation, creativity, and love, qualities that Jake's theft can never replicate. Maya, Nani says as we walk to our cars, your grandfather used to say that the truth is like cardamom in milk chai. You can try to hide it, strain it out, dilute it with other flavors. But eventually, the true essence always rises to the surface. That night, I work a double shift at my current restaurant job, mechanically preparing dishes that pay my bills while my mind races with legal strategies and evidence compilation. My coworkers know something is happening. I've been distracted, taking frequent calls from lawyers and journalists, but I haven't told anyone the full story yet. Around midnight, as I'm cleaning my station, my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Maya, this is Marcus Chen, head chef at Provisions Downtown. Carmen told me about your situation. I used to work with Jake at a catering company 3 years ago. He stole recipes from us, too. Want to talk? I screenshot the message and immediately forward it to Sarah. Jake's pattern of theft apparently extends back further than I realized, and now we have potential witnesses to his history of intellectual property violation. As I drive home through empty streets, past Jake's brightly lit restaurant with its parking lot full of late-night diners enjoying my stolen heritage, I feel something shifting inside me. The scared, heartbroken woman who discovered Jake's betrayal 3 weeks ago is transforming into someone harder, more determined, more strategic. Jake thinks he can intimidate me into backing down. He believes his success and connections make him untouchable. He's convinced that his charm and manipulation will protect him, just like they always have. But he's never faced a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. He's never battled someone who's learned to channel heartbreak into laser-focused determination. Tomorrow, we send the cease and desist letters. The real war begins. The certified mail receipt crinkles in my trembling hands as I watch the postal worker deliver cease and desist letters to Jake's kitchen. 3 months of legal preparation, thousands of dollars in filing fees, and countless hours of evidence gathering have led to this moment. Sarah Chen stands beside me across the street, both of us dressed in our most professional attire for what she calls the opening shot. The crisp sound of legal papers being slapped on Jake's restaurant counter echoes through the front door as his manager accepts the delivery. Within minutes, my phone explodes with notifications. Jake's lawyer, Jake himself, and 2 different numbers I don't recognize all trying to reach me simultaneously. Let them panic, Sarah advises calmly. Our trademark applications were approved yesterday. You now have legal ownership of Heritage Fusion Cuisine, Grandmother's Secret Masala Blend, and 17 specific dish presentations including tandoori pizza with hand-ground spice crust and curry ramen with traditional aromatics. The victory feels surreal. After months of watching Jake profit from my stolen innovations, I finally have legal proof of ownership. The United States Patent and Trademark Office has officially recognized my claims, giving me exclusive rights to the techniques and presentations that Jake has built his entire restaurant concept around. My phone rings. Jake's name flashes on the screen, and this time I answer immediately. Maya, what the hell is this? His voice is strained, no longer carrying his usual confident charm. You can't trademark cooking techniques that have existed for centuries. Actually, Jake, I trademarked my specific innovations. The fusion presentations, unique spice blends, and preparation methods that I developed and that you learned directly from me and my family. Check the documentation, it's all there. This is insane. I have a business to run, employees to pay, investors who've committed millions to expansion based on these menu concepts. The metallic taste of satisfaction fills my mouth as I hear real panic in his voice for the first time. Then you should have thought about that before you stole my intellectual property. Maya, listen to me. We can work this out. I'll give you credit on the menu, maybe hire you as a consulting chef. We don't need to destroy each other over this. Destroy each other? I laugh, but there's no humor in it. Jake, you destroyed me 3 months ago when you opened a restaurant featuring my grandmother's recipes while claiming you developed them yourself. I'm just returning the favor. The line goes dead. Within an hour, Jake's high-powered attorney calls Sarah directly, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss reasonable accommodations for their client's inadvertent trademark violations. Sarah grins as she hangs up. Inadvertent violations. That's lawyer speak for we're screwed and we know it. But Jake's response proves he's not going down without a fight. By afternoon, his social media accounts are flooded with posts defending his innovative approach to fusion cuisine and claiming that he's being targeted by frivolous lawsuits from bitter competitors. His supporters, food bloggers, loyal customers, industry connections begin rallying around him with #StandWithJake hashtags. The public relations war escalates quickly. Food and Wine publishes their exposé about recipe theft in the culinary industry, featuring my case prominently alongside interviews with Carmen and 3 other chefs who've witnessed Jake's pattern of intellectual property violation. The article includes side-by-side photos of my original dish presentations from culinary school, next to identical plates being served at Jake's kitchen. But Jake fights back with his own media strategy. He appears on the local morning show, positioned as the embattled small business owner being attacked by overzealous trademark claims and opportunistic litigation. His performance is masterful, the wronged innovator whose creative expression is being stifled by legal technicalities. Food is meant to be shared, he tells the sympathetic host. These techniques have been used by countless cooks throughout history. The idea that one person can own a cooking method is fundamentally opposed to the collaborative nature of culinary innovation. Watching Jake's interview from my tiny apartment, I feel my determination waver momentarily. He's skilled at manipulation, at positioning himself as the victim while glossing over the specific circumstances of his theft. Some viewers will inevitably side with him, seeing my legal action as an overreach rather than justified protection of my intellectual property. But then my phone buzzes with a text from my grandmother. Beta, I saw the bad man on television. He speaks pretty words, but truth is truth. Your great-grandmother brought these recipes from India with hope for the future. Fight for that hope. The sound of sizzling onions fills my small kitchen as I prepare dinner, using one of my grandmother's traditional techniques that Jake has never stolen. Yet. The familiar rhythm of cooking centers me, reminds me why this fight matters beyond money or recognition. These recipes represent more than intellectual property. They're cultural heritage, family history, the evolution of immigrant cuisine, adapting to new environments while preserving essential traditions. When Jake steals my innovations, he's stealing from every woman who came before me, every cook who preserved these techniques through love and necessity. My phone rings again. This time it's Jennifer Walsh from Food and Wine. Maya, Jake's attorney contacted our legal department threatening to sue for defamation if we don't retract our article. They're claiming our reporting is biased and factually inaccurate. My stomach drops. Are you going to retract it? Hell no. We have rock-solid evidence, and Jake's threats just confirm that we hit a nerve. But I wanted to give you a heads up. He's clearly escalating his response to your trademark claims. That evening, Sarah calls with an update that changes everything. Maya, Jake's investors are getting nervous. I just got off the phone with the lead partner at Morrison Capital. They invested $2 million in Jake's expansion plans, but the trademark disputes are making them reconsider. Apparently, they're demanding that Jake resolve this quickly or they'll pull their funding. What does that mean for us? It means Jake is under tremendous pressure to settle. His entire business model depends on rapid expansion using your stolen concepts. If he can't use those techniques, his restaurant becomes just another generic fusion place. The pressure is mounting from multiple directions. Jake's legal fees are accumulating rapidly as his attorney tries to challenge my trademark approvals. His public relations campaign requires expensive crisis management specialists. Most importantly, his investors are demanding clarity about intellectual property issues before committing additional funding. 3 days later, everything reaches a breaking point. I'm working the lunch shift at my restaurant when Carmen calls, breathless with excitement. Maya, you need to get down to Jake's kitchen right now. There are protesters outside, and Jake is having a complete meltdown. I race across town to find Jake's restaurant, surrounded by a small but vocal group of protesters, mostly other chefs and culinary students, carrying signs reading "Stop Recipe Theft" and "Credit Where Credit's Due." Carmen meets me across the street, grinning broadly. It started with just a few people from culinary school, she explains. But word spread through the chef community, and now Jake's lunch service is completely disrupted. Through Jake's kitchen's front windows, I can see Jake himself storming through the dining room, his face red with anger as he argues with what appears to be his general manager. Customers are leaving, clearly uncomfortable with the chaos outside. My phone buzzes with a call from Sarah. Maya, Jake's attorney just called. They want to meet tomorrow to discuss a settlement. I think we've got him. As I watch the protest grow larger, as local news crews arrive to document the controversy, as Jake's profitable lunch service collapses under the weight of public scrutiny, I feel something I haven't experienced in months: hope. The war for my family's legacy has reached a turning point. Jake's empire of stolen innovations is finally cracking under pressure. But I know he won't surrender easily. The real battle is just beginning. The financial documents spread across Sarah's conference table tell a story of rapid decline. Jake's Kitchen, once the darling of local food critics and investors, is hemorrhaging money faster than anyone anticipated. 3 weeks of protests, negative media coverage, and trademark disputes have devastated his business in ways that surprise even me. His lunch revenue is down 60%, Sarah explains, pointing to bank statements her investigator obtained through legal discovery. Dinner reservations have dropped 40%, and 2 major catering contracts were canceled after clients saw the Food and Wine article. But the most devastating blow comes from an unexpected source. Jake's investors are demanding an immediate audit of his intellectual property claims before releasing additional funding. Morrison Capital has frozen the $2 million expansion loan pending resolution of outstanding legal disputes regarding recipe ownership and trademark violations. This is bigger than we hoped, Sarah continues. Jake's entire business model was built on rapid expansion using your stolen concepts. Without investor funding, he can't open the second location, can't franchise the concept, can't do anything except try to keep his existing restaurant afloat. The metallic taste of opportunity fills my mouth as I study Jake's financial records. His monthly overhead is astronomical: premium rent in the trendy downtown district, overstaffed kitchen, expensive marketing campaigns to rebuild his reputation. Without the revenue growth he projected, Jake's restaurant is unsustainable. Sarah, what would happen if we offered to buy his lease and equipment? She raises an eyebrow. Maya, you don't have that kind of capital. But what if I did? Hypothetically. Sarah studies the financial documents more carefully. Jake owes approximately $400,000 in combined debt: equipment loans, build-out costs, operating expenses. His lease has 18 months remaining at $8,000 per month. If someone offered to assume his debts and take over the space, he might be desperate enough to accept. The idea crystallizes as we dive deeper into Jake's financial situation. His restaurant occupies prime real estate in the city's culinary district, with a fully equipped professional kitchen, established customer base, and name recognition. The space itself is valuable. It's Jake's stolen concept that's become worthless. That afternoon, I drive to my family's restaurant for an emergency meeting with my parents and grandmother. The familiar sounds of the lunch prep, chopping, sizzling, the rhythmic pounding of spices, provide comfort as I explain my audacious plan. Beta, you want to buy the restaurant where the thief works? My mother asks, concern creasing her forehead. Not just buy it, Mama, I want to transform it. Take everything Jake stole and give it back to our community. Serve authentic fusion cuisine that honors our heritage instead of exploiting it. My father, ever practical, pulls out his calculator. Maya, even if this man is desperate, $400,000 is more money than our family has ever seen. Where would you get such funding? That's when my grandmother speaks up, her voice carrying the weight of decades of careful planning. Beta, when your grandfather died, I put money aside every month for 40 years. For emergencies, for opportunities, for the next generation. I have been saving for something important. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a worn bank book. I have $300,000. If this will protect our family's recipes and give you the chance to build something real, then this is what the money is for. The room falls silent except for the distant sound of curry simmering on the stove. $300,000, my grandmother's life savings, accumulated through decades of 12-hour days in a restaurant kitchen, carefully preserved for a moment exactly like this. Nani, I can't take your life savings. Beta, what good is money if not to fight for what matters? Your grandfather would say this is how we honor the ancestors. Not by keeping money safe in a bank, but by using it to protect what they gave us. My father nods slowly. If Mama is willing to invest, the restaurant can contribute another $50,000 from our emergency fund. That gives you $350,000. Still short by $50,000, but closer than I dreamed possible. As we discuss logistics and possibilities, my phone rings. It's Marcus Chen, the chef who contacted me about Jake's previous recipe theft. Maya, I heard through the grapevine about your trademark victory. Listen, a group of us have been talking, chefs who've been screwed over by people like Jake, and we want to help. If you're serious about opening a restaurant that does fusion cuisine the right way, we've got investors who might be interested. The conversation that follows changes everything. Marcus represents a network of established chefs who've been watching my legal battle with Jake, impressed by my determination to fight back against intellectual property theft. They've seen too many talented cooks get taken advantage of by manipulative partners and unscrupulous competitors. We're talking about $50,000 in seed funding, Marcus explains. Not a loan, an investment in what you're building. Some of us want to be part of a restaurant that proves you can honor culinary traditions while creating something innovative, Inai says. By evening, I have a complete financial picture. My grandmother's $300,000, my family's $50,000 contribution, and $50,000 from Marcus's chef investor group. $400,000, exactly what we need to make Jake an offer he can't refuse. But Sarah raises an important concern during our strategy session. Maya, acquiring Jake's restaurant space is one thing, but you need to be prepared for his response. He's already shown he's willing to fight dirty, intimidation, media manipulation, legal threats. If you take over his space and succeed where he failed, he'll try to destroy you. Let him try, I respond. But Sarah's expression remains serious. I'm not just talking about competition, Jake's personality type. When people like him lose control, they can become genuinely dangerous. You'll need security measures, legal protection, maybe even a restraining order. The warmth of my grandmother's hand on my shoulder grounds me as we discuss the darker implications of my plan. Jake's escalating desperation, his pattern of manipulation and threats, his history of stealing from multiple chefs, all point to someone who won't accept defeat gracefully. Beta, Nani says softly, bullies are only powerful when good people are afraid to fight back. We fought bigger bullies than this man when we came to America with nothing. We can fight him too. That night, I lie awake in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling and listening to the distant sounds of the city. Tomorrow, we make Jake an offer that will either end this war or escalate it to levels I'm not sure I'm prepared for. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Maya, I know what you're planning. Back off or you'll regret it. Jay. I screenshot the threat and immediately forward it to Sarah. Jake's intimidation attempts are escalating, which means our strategy is working. He's scared, desperate, running out of options. But desperation makes people unpredictable. As I finally drift off to sleep, I can't shake the feeling that Jake's next move will be his most dangerous yet. The war for my family's legacy is about to enter its final, most perilous phase. The farmer's market buzzes with Saturday morning energy as I set up my booth, a simple folding table, portable burners, and ingredients for a live cooking demonstration that will change everything. Local food bloggers, curious customers, and several recognizable faces from the culinary community gather around as I begin preparing my grandmother's signature dishes in full view of the public. The sizzling sound of onions hitting hot oil creates an aromatic cloud that draws people closer as I explain each step of the process. This isn't just a cooking demo, it's a public reclamation of my heritage, broadcast live on Instagram and Facebook, documented by friendly journalists who've been following my legal battle with Jake. This technique was taught to me by my grandmother, who learned it from her mother in Gujarat, India, I explained to the gathering crowd. Carefully layering spices in the traditional sequence that creates the complex flavor profile Jake has been claiming as his own innovation. These aren't ancient techniques discovered by modern chefs. They're living traditions passed down through generations of women in my family. Carmen works beside me, helping prep ingredients while live streaming the demonstration to her substantial social media following. We've coordinated this event carefully. Maximum visibility, unambiguous documentation of my expertise, and clear explanation of the cultural context behind each technique Jake has stolen. The crowd grows larger as word spreads through the market. Food enthusiasts, culinary students, local chefs, and dozens of supporters who've been following my trademark battle with Jake. The morning energy feels electric, charged with possibility and righteous anger. That's when I see him approaching through the crowd. Jake strides toward my booth with purposeful aggression, his face flushed with anger, still wearing his chef's coat as if he rushed directly from his restaurant's Saturday brunch service. Several people in the crowd recognize him, and whispers ripple through the gathering as they realize they're about to witness a direct confrontation. "This is harassment," Jake announces loudly, his voice carrying across the farmer's market. "Maya Patel is deliberately interfering with my business by spreading false claims about recipe ownership." The crowd shifts uncomfortably, sensing drama but unsure what they're witnessing. I continue cooking calmly, ladling curry into sample cups, while Jake positions himself directly in front of my booth. "These techniques don't belong to you, Maya. They're part of a culinary tradition that spans centuries. You can't just trademark cooking methods and claim ownership of an entire culture's food heritage." His words are carefully chosen, designed to make me appear greedy and culturally insensitive. But Jake makes a crucial mistake. He's performing for an audience that includes several people who know the real story. "Actually, Jake," Carmen interjects, holding up her phone to ensure she's recording everything, "Maya isn't trademarking traditional techniques. She's trademarking specific innovations she developed. Fusion presentations and unique spice blends that you learned directly from her and her family." Jake's confident mask slips slightly as he realizes this isn't going according to his plan. The crowd includes too many witnesses to his theft, too many people who remember our culinary school collaboration. "I spent years perfecting these recipes," he insists, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. That's when I play my trump card. "Jake, would you like me to show everyone the recordings where you explicitly acknowledge that these are my family's techniques?" I pull out my phone, thumb hovering over a video file. "Or the emails, where you asked Carmen to recreate Maya's grandmother's masala blend. Maybe the social media post where you thanked me for teaching you these family secrets." The color drains from Jake's face as he realizes the extent of documentation I possess. The crowd leans in, understanding they're witnessing more than a business dispute. They're seeing the exposure of a fundamental betrayal. "You're taking this out of context," Jake says weakly. "Am I? Let's ask my grandmother herself." I gesture toward the edge of the crowd where Nani sits on a folding chair, wrapped in her favorite shawl, watching the confrontation with sharp, intelligent eyes. At 82, she's seen enough bullies to recognize one immediately. "Nani, could you please tell everyone how Jake learned your masala techniques?" My grandmother rises slowly, her voice carrying despite her small stature. This young man came to my kitchen many times with my granddaughter. I taught him with love, thinking he would honor our traditions. Instead, he steals from us and claims our recipes as his own creation. The crowd murmurs with disapproval as Jake realizes he's been outmaneuvered. An elderly immigrant woman accusing him of theft carries moral weight that no amount of charm can overcome. Mrs. Patel, I never claimed, Jake begins, but Nani cuts him off with a gesture. Beta, in my country, we have a saying, the truth needs no decoration. You can speak pretty words, but everyone here knows what you did. The warm embrace of community support surrounds me as people in the crowd begin voicing their own opinions. Food bloggers who've eaten at both Jake's restaurant and my family's place. Culinary students who remember our school collaboration. Local chefs who've witnessed Jake's pattern of taking credit for other people's innovations. Jake's desperation becomes visible as he realizes he's losing control of the narrative. This is a coordinated attack on my business by someone who can't accept that we're no longer together professionally or personally. The moment he mentions our past relationship, the crowd's sympathy shifts decisively against him. Reducing this intellectual property theft to a romantic dispute is exactly the wrong move in front of an audience that understands culinary culture. Jake, I say calmly, continuing to stir the curry that fills the air with my grandmother's signature spice blend, this was never about our relationship. This is about you stealing my family's recipes and claiming them as your own innovations. But since you brought up context, let's provide some. I pull out a printed timeline that Sarah helped me prepare. A chronological breakdown of Jake's recipe theft documented with photos, emails, and witness statements. Carmen holds it up for the crowd while I explain how Jake systematically learned my techniques, gained my family's trust, then launched a restaurant featuring my stolen innovations. Every dish on Jake's menu that he calls an innovation was developed in my grandmother's kitchen or during our culinary school collaboration. I continue. I have documentation proving the development timeline, witness testimony, and now legal trademark protection for my specific techniques. Jake's attorney must have advised him never to admit knowledge of my proprietary methods, because he makes one final attempt at denial. Maya developed some interesting concepts during school, but the dishes I serve are my own interpretations of traditional techniques. That's when Carmen drops the nuclear option. Jake, would you like me to play the video of you explaining to customers at our pop-up restaurant how Maya's grandmother taught you these specific spicing methods? She holds up her phone, finger poised over a damning video file. The one where you specifically credit Maya's family traditions? Jake's face goes completely white as he realizes the depth of evidence arrayed against him. The confident chef who arrived to intimidate me into backing down now looks like a cornered animal, desperate and potentially dangerous. This isn't over, Maya, he says, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper that only I can hear. You have no idea what you're dealing with. But his threat carries no weight in front of a crowd that's witnessed his public humiliation. As Jake storms away from the farmer's market, leaving behind a buzz of supportive conversation and social media posts documenting his exposure, I feel something I haven't experienced in months: complete vindication. The truth has finally risen to the surface, just like cardamom in milk chai. But Jake's parting words echo in my mind as I pack up my demonstration. His threat wasn't just angry bluster, it was a promise. Whatever he's planning next will be his most desperate, most dangerous move yet. The war isn't over. It's just entered its final, most perilous phase. The keys to Jake's former restaurant feel heavy in my trembling hands as I stand before the locked front door at 6 a.m., 3 days after his complete financial collapse. The brass nameplate still reads Jake's Kitchen, but inside the space is hollow. Tables stacked, equipment covered, the dreams and lies that built this place finally reduced to an empty shell waiting for rebirth. Sarah Chen stands beside me with the final paperwork, official documents that transfer ownership of the lease, equipment, and liquor license to Heritage Kitchen LLC, the company I've formed with my grandmother as co-owner and my parents as silent partners. The metallic taste of victory mingles with exhaustion as I slide the key into the lock. Jake signed the transfer documents yesterday, Sarah explains as we enter the eerily quiet space. His attorney advised him that fighting our trademark claims would cost more than the restaurant is worth. Between legal fees, lost revenue, and investor pressure, he had no choice but to accept our offer. The familiar aroma of my grandmother's spice blend still lingers faintly in the kitchen air, evidence of recipes that were never truly Jake's to begin with. As I walk through the dining room where I first discovered his betrayal, I feel the weight of everything that's led to this moment. The heartbreak, the legal battles, the public confrontation, the financial risk my family took to make this possible. My phone buzzes with a text from Marcus Chen. Saw the news about you acquiring Jake's place. When do we start planning the new menu? The news. Word of Jake's surrender spread quickly through the city's tight-knit culinary community. Food and Wine published a follow-up article titled Justice Served: How Maya Patel Reclaimed Her Stolen Heritage. Local blogs documented the complete timeline from intellectual property theft to trademark victory to restaurant acquisition. Even the morning news ran a segment about the chef who fought back. But the sweetest vindication comes from an unexpected source. As I explore the kitchen that will soon serve authentic fusion cuisine under my direction, I discover that most of Jake's staff chose to stay rather than follow him to whatever comes next. Carmen greets me with a huge smile and a folder full of transition documents. Maya, I've talked to the whole team. Everyone wants to work for someone who actually developed these recipes instead of stealing them. The warm embrace of community support continues throughout the morning as I meet with vendors, review inventory, and begin planning Heritage Kitchen's transformation. The produce supplier who'd been uncomfortable with Jake's aggressive expansion timeline, the wine distributor who'd questioned the authenticity of Jake's traditional menu descriptions, the local farmer who'd grown specialty ingredients for my specific fusion concepts. We're excited to work with the real innovator behind these dishes, the spice vendor tells me as we review orders for my grandmother's proprietary blends. Jake never understood the cultural significance of what he was serving. It felt like appropriation rather than appreciation. By noon, I'm standing in the kitchen where Jake once claimed credit for my life's work, surrounded by loyal staff members planning menus that will finally honor my family's heritage instead of exploiting it. The sizzling sound of test preparations fills the air as we work through recipe modifications and presentation updates. My grandmother arrives for lunch, moving slowly but with unmistakable pride as she surveys the kitchen that will soon bear our family name. At 82, Nani has lived to see justice served and traditions protected. Beta, your grandfather would be so proud, she says softly, running her weathered hands over the professional equipment that cost Jake hundreds of thousands of borrowed dollars. We came to this country with nothing but recipes and hope. Now those recipes have their own restaurant. The afternoon brings a steady stream of supporters, culinary school classmates, local food bloggers, customers who'd been uncomfortable eating at Jake's restaurant once they learned about the recipe theft. Everyone wants to know when Heritage Kitchen will officially open, what changes we're planning, how they can support authentic fusion cuisine. But the most satisfying moment comes when I receive Jake's final act of surrender. A public statement posted on his social media accounts, carefully crafted by his attorney to avoid admitting legal liability while acknowledging my contributions. After careful consideration, I've decided to pursue new opportunities outside the restaurant industry. I want to acknowledge the talented culinary professionals who contributed to the development of fusion techniques during my time in food service, particularly Maya Patel and her family's traditional methods that inspired many menu items. I wish Maya success with her new venture. It's not a full confession, but it's public recognition that Jake's innovations came from my family's traditions. For the culinary community following our battle, the message is clear. Jake Morrison's career as a fusion chef is over. Sarah calls that evening with news that completes my victory. Maya, Jake's investor group, is demanding he repay their loans immediately since he no longer has the intellectual property rights to expand the concept they funded. He's filing for personal bankruptcy. Jake Morrison, the charming manipulator who stole my heritage and built a career on my family's recipes, has lost everything. His restaurant, his reputation, his financial backing, his future in the culinary industry. The man who threatened to destroy me has destroyed himself through his own greed and deception. But as I stand in Heritage Kitchen's dining room that evening, planning the grand reopening celebration, I realize this victory is about more than defeating Jake. It's about proving that authenticity defeats appropriation, that family traditions have value beyond profit, that immigrant stories deserve protection and respect. My phone rings. It's a producer from the Food Network interested in featuring Heritage Kitchen's story on an upcoming show about innovative fusion cuisine. We'd love to document your journey from recipe theft victim to successful restaurant owner, she explains. Your story resonates with so many chefs who've faced similar challenges. As I hang up and look around the space that will soon reopen as Heritage Kitchen, I feel something I haven't experienced since Jake first stole my grandmother's recipes. Complete, unqualified hope for the future. Tomorrow, we start menu testing. Next week, we hire additional staff. In 2 weeks, Heritage Kitchen officially opens, serving fusion cuisine that honors tradition while pushing creative boundaries. Exactly what Jake claimed to do, but authentically this time. The war for my family's legacy is finally over. I've won more than a restaurant. I've reclaimed my heritage, protected my grandmother's traditions, and proven that justice sometimes does prevail. But most importantly, I've learned that the best revenge against someone who steals your dreams is building something even better with your own hands. The aroma of cardamom and success fills Heritage Kitchen as I watch the dinner rush unfold 6 months after our grand opening. Every table is occupied, the wait list extends 2 hours, and food critics from 3 major publications have visited this month alone. The sound of satisfied conversation mingles with the rhythmic chopping from our open kitchen, where my grandmother's techniques are finally being honored rather than stolen. The familiar warmth of community support surrounds me as I move through the dining room, greeting regular customers who've become friends, explaining fusion concepts to curious newcomers, watching my staff execute dishes with the precision and respect these recipes deserve. This isn't just a restaurant, it's a cultural bridge, a place where tradition meets innovation through authentic collaboration rather than theft. Carmen appears beside me carrying tonight's special, my newest creation, a deconstructed samosa presented as modern art while maintaining every traditional flavor my great-grandmother would recognize. Table 12 wants to know if you'll explain the heritage behind this dish, she says with a grin. Food blogger from Bon Appetit. As I approach the table to share my family's immigration story, the cultural significance of comfort foods, and the evolution of recipes across generations, I catch a glimpse of movement outside the front window. A familiar figure stands across the street in the shadows, watching Heritage Kitchen's success with obvious bitterness. Jake Morrison looks like a ghost of his former self. Thinner, wearing rumpled clothes instead of pristine chef's coats, his once confident posture now defeated and desperate. He's been spotted around the neighborhood several times since declaring bankruptcy, apparently unable to accept that the restaurant he lost has thrived beyond his wildest projections. But I feel no sympathy, only satisfaction. Jake chose theft over authenticity, manipulation over collaboration, greed over respect. His downfall was inevitable once people learned the truth about his stolen innovations. The justice of his situation becomes even clearer when Marcus Chen arrives for his weekly dinner, bringing news from the broader culinary community. Jake tried to get hired at 3 different restaurants this month, Marcus reports quietly as we sit at the bar. Word gets around fast in this industry. Nobody wants to hire someone with a documented history of recipe theft. The metallic taste of complete vindication fills my mouth as Marcus continues updating me on Jake's failed attempts to rebuild his career. Applications rejected, partnerships declined, even a food truck concept abandoned when potential investors discovered his history of intellectual property theft. He's completely blacklisted, Marcus adds. The Food and Wine article made sure of that. No serious chef wants to work with someone they can't trust with proprietary recipes. As we speak, my grandmother emerges from the kitchen carrying a plate of her latest creation, fusion chai macarons that combine French pastry technique with traditional Indian spice profiles. At 83, Nani has become Heritage Kitchen's secret weapon, developing new concepts that honor our heritage while pushing creative boundaries. Beta, the food magazine people want to take pictures of these, she says proudly, setting down the delicate cookies that represent everything Jake could never replicate. Genuine innovation born from authentic cultural knowledge rather than stolen techniques. The photographer from Bon Appetit spends an hour documenting Heritage Kitchen's success story, interviewing staff members about working for a chef who actually developed the recipes she serves, capturing the energy of a restaurant built on respect rather than theft. The article will be titled, How Heritage Kitchen Proves Authenticity Beats Appropriation. But the most meaningful recognition comes from an unexpected source. As the evening rush winds down, a young culinary student approaches my table with nervous excitement. Chef Patel, I'm starting my senior project on intellectual property protection in the restaurant industry. Your case is required reading in our business law class. You've inspired a whole generation of chefs to document their innovations and protect their work. This is the real victory, not just defeating Jake, but creating lasting change in an industry where recipe theft has been tolerated for too long. Heritage Kitchen has become a symbol of what's possible when authenticity defeats appropriation, when cultural traditions are honored rather than exploited. My phone buzzes with a call from Sarah Chen, now handling intellectual property cases for 3 other chefs who've contacted her after hearing about my successful trademark defense. Maya, I just wanted you to know, Jake's bankruptcy filing was approved today. His personal assets are being liquidated to pay creditors, and he's moving back to his hometown in Ohio. His restaurant career is officially over. As I hang up and survey Heritage Kitchen's bustling dining room, I feel the deep satisfaction of justice finally served. Jake Morrison came to our city with charm and ambition, stole my family's heritage, built a fraudulent career on my innovations, and ultimately lost everything when the truth emerged. But my victory extends beyond his defeat. The financial success of Heritage Kitchen has allowed my family to expand our original restaurant, hire additional staff, and establish the Maya Patel Foundation for Culinary Heritage Protection, a nonprofit that helps immigrant chefs document and protect their traditional techniques. The scratching sound of pen on paper fills my office as I sign the final documents to purchase the building that houses Heritage Kitchen, ensuring our family's culinary legacy has a permanent home. My grandmother's life savings, combined with the restaurant's profits and Marcus's investor network, has made ownership possible. From victim to victor, Sarah says as she witnesses my signature on the property deed. You've built something extraordinary from the ashes of Jake's betrayal. As closing time approaches, I step outside Heritage Kitchen to breathe the cool night air and reflect on the journey that brought me here. 18 months ago, I was a heartbroken culinary school graduate watching the man I loved steal my heritage and claim it as his innovation. Tonight, I'm the owner of a successful restaurant, a protected trademark portfolio, and a reputation as a chef who fought back against theft and won. The sound of my grandmother's laughter carries through Heritage Kitchen's front windows as she shares stories with the evening's final customers, tales of immigration, adaptation, and the recipes that preserved our culture across continents and generations. These are the stories Jake could never tell authentically because he never lived them. My phone buzzes with one final message of the evening, a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your success. You deserved better than what I gave you. Jay. Jake's message of surrender arrives too late to matter. His acknowledgement of my mistreatment feels hollow after months of threats, intimidation, and public denial. But it confirms what I've always known. Deep down, he understood exactly what he was stealing from me. I delete the message without responding. Jake Morrison no longer deserves space in my thoughts or energy in my responses. He's become irrelevant to the story of Heritage Kitchen, a cautionary tale rather than an active threat. As I lock Heritage Kitchen's front door and prepare to head home, I catch the familiar scent of my grandmother's spice blend wafting from the kitchen vents. Protected now by trademark law, preserved by authentic technique, and honored by a community that understands the difference between innovation and appropriation. The war for my family's legacy is over. I've won more than a legal battle or a business competition. I've proven that authenticity ultimately defeats theft, that cultural heritage has value beyond profit, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply building something beautiful with your own hands. Tomorrow, Heritage Kitchen opens for Sunday brunch, featuring new fusion concepts I'm developing with my grandmother. Innovations that honor tradition while pushing creative boundaries. Exactly what Jake claimed to do, but authentically this time. The future belongs to chefs who create rather than steal, who honor rather than appropriate, who build rather than destroy. And Heritage Kitchen stands as proof that when you fight for what's right, sometimes justice does prevail. My grandmother was right about cardamom in milk chai. The truth always rises to the surface, no matter how much someone tries to hide it. Tonight, that truth tastes like victory.